And now let me introduce the Irish Commissioner for Rule of Law, Democracy and Consumer Protection, Michael McGrath, who will talk about how we confront hybrid threats.
Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good afternoon. It's great to be here with you all today at this spectacular venue in a very special setting here in Copenhagen. Control, not freedom. Rule by decree, not of law. Repression, not opportunity. Confrontation, not cooperation. Isolation, not solidarity. In Europe, we know all too well the results of such systems of governance. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that such approaches remain confined to our history books. We must work harder to ensure that this does not become the vision of our future. We live at a time of geopolitical upheaval that is unprecedented in the lives of millions of Europeans. Throughout Europe and the wider world, we hear of managed, directed, even illiberal democracy. But Europe has learned from its past, and we shall not repeat it. From ancient Greece, via the Roman Republic, to revolutionary France, to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the communist regimes, and to the barricades of the Maidan, democratic ideals are woven into the very fabric of European history and indeed culture. Not arbitrary power, but universal empowerment. Not the supremacy of some, but equality for all. In 80 short years, pursuit of these ideals helped turn Europe from a shattered continent into a union of 27 sovereign nations and 450 million free peoples. The European Union is founded on democracy, the rule of law, and respect for fundamental rights. Because several of our EU member states went through the hardship of war and authoritarian regimes, but we are now together in our union striving towards a different future. But this is a future that some want to destroy. As the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine and hybrid war against Europe makes painfully clear, but this is also a future that others want to share. As the courage and heroism of the people of Ukraine reminds us daily by defending the sovereignty, democracy and European future that Putin is trying to extinguish. Distinguished guests, fellow defenders of democracy, it is a great personal honour and a privilege for me to speak to you today. Last year, Commission President von der Leyen presented her vision for a strong Europe in the world. This year it is my pleasure to present how the Commission is shielding Europe's democracy from hybrid threats. As you discussed this morning, the defence of democracy is not a metaphor, it is a reality. The price of freedom has not only been paid in Europe's past, it is being paid today to deliver Ukraine's future in Europe. And like so many of you, I have dedicated my career to upholding and promoting democracy because I am a Democrat to the core. I have served as a public representative for 25 years. I've been motivated by the belief that democracy is not only for people, it is about people in all of their diversity. For Ireland, as for so many European states, the road to democracy was certainly long and sometimes treacherous. But as Robert Schuman laid down in his iconic declaration made 75 years ago last week, Europe will not be made all at once or according to a single plan. It will be built through concrete achievements which first create a de facto solidarity. This step-by-step approach, building consensus and solidarity, achieving success and learning from failures, is the complex beauty and power of democracy. But this very power makes it a threat to the opponents of democracy who try to undermine it through many different hybrid means. Globally, The World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report ranks disinformation as the 4th greatest risk to democracy. In Europe, the Eurobarometer reported that 2 out of 5 Europeans see false or misleading information as the most serious threat to democracy. On an unprecedented scale across Europe, internal and external actors have been attempting to impact election results and to weaken public trust in democratic representatives, processes, and democratic institutions. To uphold democracy, we should not only defend it, but we must actively promote it. Our new European Democracy Shield will seek to fend off these threats as we promote the positive and inclusive agenda of our union of values. As we are working to prepare the Shield, there are some key questions to ask ourselves. First, how can we increase societal resilience and preparedness, as well as foster citizens' participation and engagement in democracy? In a democracy, power is vested in the people. So we want citizens to use their democratic power to chart the course of their countries and also of the EU. Through critical thinking, digital and media literacy, citizens can navigate the increasingly complex online information environment. And with resilience against disinformation campaigns and cyber threats, citizens can form views that are truly their own. And that should be our objective. So we will promote active participation in elections, democratic debates, and policy making. Citizens must feel represented by their elected representatives, their institutions, and know that they have a real stake in public policy making. Second, how can we reinforce our democratic frameworks and checks and balances? When democratic power is vested in people, they must be able to organise and communicate freely and safely. Civil society organisations and free, plural and independent media are the bloodline to any system of democratic checks and balances. They form the first line of defence for our rights and for our values, speaking truth to power and holding democratic representatives, processes and institutions to account. They are hubs of information, debate and ideas, informing, engaging and empowering citizens. Our Shield will help citizens to be more organised, connected and informed. Third, how can we ensure the fairness and integrity of our elections? As the democratic ideas of empowered, informed and organised citizens meet each other, fairness requires equality of arms. Political candidates and representatives must be able to campaign and carry out their duties safely, especially targeted categories such as female politicians. People should feel empowered to stand for office and not be discouraged, intimidated or even silenced by discrimination or by hate speech. Candidates and parties must be able to campaign on an equal footing without undue privileged coverage, especially online. Users of online platforms should be able to know if political messages are being promoted, such as via algorithms or recommender systems. And they should be able to know if those who promote political content are being paid to do so. Our Shield will aim to tackle such systemic risks to civic discourse and electoral processes to protect the integrity of citizens' voices and their votes. Finally, but not the least, how can we better counter threats such as foreign information manipulation, interference and disinformation? Truth is the first casualty of war, so the saying goes. And this is nowhere more true than in online information wars, where front lines reach into every office and every home every single day. So allow me to be very clear. Defending facts is not censorship. Freedom of expression, of association, and the right to participate in public life and elections are fundamental freedoms across our union, enshrined in EU law and in the laws of our member states. But these freedoms do not apply to bots, trolls or fake accounts, incitement or to hate speech. Free speech is not at stake when the information space is flooded with FEMI and disinformation sponsored by hostile actors in deliberate attempts to influence political debates and elections. Freedom of expression is at stake when genuine engagement by citizens is drowned out by foreign information, manipulation and interference and disinformation. So our shield will aim to help prevent, detect and respond to FEMI and disinformation, strengthen pre-bunking and debunking, and establish a dedicated EU network of fact checkers. And we will do this by harnessing our greatest strength, the whole of European society in all of its diversity. We have just launched a public consultation on the European Democracy Shield that allows anyone to respond online. And I invite you, go to the Have Your Say portal and, well, have your say. From citizens, through civil society to member states themselves, we have a diversity of expertise and indeed of experience. We need to draw our strength by learning from each other, and serving as that nexus of cooperation takes us to the very heart of what the EU is and what the EU does best. Dear delegates, whether we contrast the Europe of today with the Europe of the past, or our Europe and Putin's Russia, we see that democracy delivers the freest, the safest and the most prosperous societies of this or any time. What we have, we must uphold and we must promote. Democracy is for people. Democracy is about people, and democracy is with people. We will not allow the genuine grievances of our citizens to be manipulated by hostile actors to undermine our democratic representatives, processes or institutions. With the European Democracy Shield, we will seek to fend off these hybrid threats and empower free citizens to make their own independent decisions about the future of their European democracies. Thank you for your attention.
Hello. Thank you, Commissioner McGrath.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm Nick Vinocour, Politico's editor-at-large. Very pleased to be here today. Thank you. And as usual, you're welcome to ask your questions. I'm sure they'll be better than mine. Thank you for coming, Commissioner. These days, European democracy is proving incredibly popular with politicians abroad. We've got people like Elon Musk taking an interest in our elections here, even members of the US administration. I want to say, what message do you have for politicians outside the EU who are weighing in, who are telling European voters how they should vote in our elections?
Well, thank you, Nick, and it's good to be here, and thanks for the opportunity of having the Q&A as well. You know, they're entitled to their views in the same way that every European citizen in our own continent is entitled to their view. We have to defend freedom of expression in all its forms, even if we don't like the views that are being expressed. But at the same time, we have a right to push back where we think the views are simply wrong and not based on facts. And that is why we have been, quite forceful in laying out that the Digital Services Act, which has been, attacked by a number of quarters, is not about censorship, far from it. In fact, it has inbuilt safeguards to protect democracy. For example, the requirement on the platforms to be transparent about their content moderation policies. So if you post a comment that may not suit the political agenda of anyone controlling a platform, they might take it down, but they owe you an explanation, and they need to be clear as to what their content moderation policies are, and they need to be transparent. So this works both ways. Freedom of expression must be protected. The DSA is not about moderating content except for illegal content, which of course has no place online or offline. But that apart, I think in the Europe of today, there has never been more opportunity to express an opinion, and never more opportunity for that opinion to travel far and wide. And any of us just have to, open up our phones and look at the platforms, and particularly any of us in politics won't have to scroll very long to see a lot of very harsh criticism. And so be it. That's the entitlement and the right that people have. But we also have to ensure that undue influence, such as using the extraordinary power of technology through algorithms or recommender systems, to amplify certain content and drown out other content, with the potential that has to influence elections. We can't be blind to that risk, because it is a real risk, and it can have a very material impact on the outcome of elections. So it is a difficult balance we have to strike to make sure we absolutely defend freedom of expression at all times, and explain that the measures we're putting in place are to protect and defend that, and are certainly not about censorship.
Right.
The very opposite.
Right. Difference between censorship and boosting certain narratives online, right? Now, the Commission has a number of enforcement actions, investigations open. What can you tell us about the Commission's commitment to enforcing its rules, including against very large platforms like X or TikTok? There was a recent fine. Is the Commission ready to go all the way in enforcing its own rules about, for example, with the DSA?
Yes, the commitment is absolute. And I know sometimes this gets dragged into political debate and into perhaps other negotiations where it's not relevant. But the co-legislators have made their decision. The DSA is the law of Europe, and we are duty-bound to implement it. And we will do so, and we will enforce it fairly. We too have to be bound by due process, and so there can be a frustration sometimes about the length of time that actions take, but the counterparty has a right to challenge the assertion of the Commission. They have a right to be heard, and they have a right to due process. So it does take time. There is no silver bullet, and we have to make sure that we are rigorous in our approach, because ultimately any decision of the Commission can be subject to court challenge, and of course so often is, and the Court of Justice will do their job, and if we have not fully complied with the law that we are entrusted with, then that will be called out, and that would be very damaging in itself. So again, we have to get the balance right. We have to act, have the political will and courage to act, but also do so in a way that respects due process and respects the law itself.
Yeah. Thanks. We were back there a minute ago, and you mentioned that you'd recently been to Hungary. Speaking of democracy, what did you find there? What state is democracy in Hungary? What were you hearing from some of the civil society actors that you met over there?
Well, rule of law is a fundamental pillar of democracy. Without rule of law, democracy is undermined, and the Commission's views on the rule of law situation in Hungary have been well documented, and various actions remain underway. A lot of public money has been frozen or is not available to Hungary, up to €18 billion across a whole range of different programmes because of rule of law breaches. I wish it were otherwise. I wish that Hungarian students could avail of Erasmus, that universities in Hungary could avail of Horizon funding. My door remains open to engage with them and to find a way forward, but there has to be a willingness on their part to do so. I was very concerned that much of what I heard from civil society and from media organisations, the space within which they operate is shrinking, and they feel, I think, the cold winds coming at them when they seek to do their work on a day-to-day basis. And their work is vital. It's an intrinsic part of any democratic society, and they must be defended, and the European Union will do so. So we've grave concerns about much of what is happening, and while we're open to dialogue, we also have to demonstrate a willingness to act, and we have done so far and will continue to. Again, there's no silver bullet because the processes take time, right, and there are various actions that are before the Court of Justice, various infringement proceedings. Money has been frozen. There's an Article 7 procedure before the Council since 2018. There hasn't been a sufficient consensus among member states to advance that. It's their prerogative, it's their choice, and we have to respect that. President von der Leyen has asked the Budget Commissioner, Piotr Serafin, and myself to work on building a closer link between respect and compliance with rule of law and access to EU funds. We already have strong tools in place, like the conditionality mechanism, But we need to now answer the question, is there more that we need to do to strengthen that link? And that work is underway now in the context of the multi-annual financial framework.
All right, interesting. I want to just take one question from the audience since our time is very limited here. So sort of from the other side of the aisle, about the AfD, German intelligence agencies classify AfD as a right-wing extremist group. Is this already a violation of free speech and opinion, in your view?
The classification?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, the classification by German intelligence of the AfD.
Well, look, it's a classification by the national authorities. It's nothing to do with the EU institutions, and very often decisions that are made at a national basis, including court decisions, whether it be in Romania or France, get blamed on the European Union and the European Commission. You know, we have to be very clear on where the demarcation is between our role and responsibilities and the competence of the national member states and their respective authorities. You know, people are free to vote for who they choose, but they should do so based on having the information that they need to make an informed decision. And that is where the Democracy Shield comes into play, and it will examine the areas that I spoke about in my speech earlier on. We aim to conclude it in Q3 of this year.
That was going to be my question.
The consultation is open for another few days, the 26th of May, so please do make your voice heard. It will be in the form of a Commission communication that could lead to legislative proposals. Okay. That's not yet decided. And I mean, I would make the point, there's no predetermined outcome. We've given the headings that we are going to examine, but we're open to other ideas as well. I think we certainly need to coordinate a lot of the good work that is being done across the different services in a better way. There is a lot of good work being done, and to be fair to the last Commission and Parliament and the Member States, they introduced a number of very important tools, some of which have yet to fully come into effect. We have a Media Freedom Act that kicks in August. We have a political advertising regulation around the transparency of political ads, which is important too, coming into effect in October. So what we will seek to do is complement all of that work, complement the DSA provisions, complement the provisions of the AI Act that seek to protect democracy as well, and see what more needs to be done.
Brilliant. Well, there we have it. Q3, maybe a communication, maybe legislation. For the EU geeks here, that will mean something. Thank you very much, Commissioner. That's all we have time for here. Yep. I would like to welcome our next moderator to the stage, Jean Meserve, and thank you very much. Thanks again.
Okay.